Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview for Terrors of London. This one is from Kolossal Games, and it is a deck building game with a distinct twist. This one's going to bring a spatial element to how you're playing your cards out on the table.
Yep, so this one takes place in Victorian London with a bunch of different monsters.
Yeah, you got beasts, you got undead, spirits, all sorts of things.
Very reminiscent of a game that I loved on PlayStation called The Wolf Among Us. Did you play that game?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So kind of the same similar theme. Like I said, this isn't Fable-based, it's definitely monster-based.
Yeah.
Though. You're going to have 4 different types of factions in the game. They represent things like
beasts, they've got undead, you've got spirits, and mortals, of course.
Yeah. So each player is going to start, let's go through the components first.
Yeah.
And as we say with all these Kickstarter games, check out the Kickstarter page because obviously you're going to have Kickstarter stretch goals and all kinds of different factions that will probably be added in, different overlords you'll be able to play with. And of course, these are just prototype components as you see them right now.
Yeah, we largely have cards on the table because it's a deck builder, but some of these tokens will probably be replaced for sure.
So each player is going to start with 10 cards in their hand. They're going to pick an overlord. The overlord's going to dictate 2 of the 10 cards in their hand, which are kind of variable player powers that tie into their specific power. Each of these overlords is also going to have an X number of health, usually between 40 to 50 health. So they're going to vary depending upon the power of the overlord that you're using. Also, each player is going to start with 3 of the fanatic cards. These are the cards that are going to do baseline damage in the game called power. And then you're going to start with 5 of the cultist cards, which are going to provide you with coin that allow you to purchase new cards into your deck. So it's a very basic deck building game, very much like Star Realms, where it's a very combative one, but there's some elements, hidden elements in the game that we'll get to as we explain the game. So the decks are the cards themselves. There's 4 different factions that we mentioned. Each of these factions in the upper right-hand corner or left-hand corner is going to have the coin cost to buy the card and also the faction that it's tied into. Below that, you're going to see the abilities of the card, and there's a range of different keywords that can be used through the course of the game. And then across the bottom is the real hook in the game. This is the horde ability. By tying 2 very specific type of cards together when you play them, it's going to key off those bottom abilities, giving you chain reactions through the course of the game.
Yeah, and what's interesting about those horde abilities for sure is the fact that even though your overlord might be sort of the ruler over one of the factions in a way, you don't want to collect just that faction necessarily, because what you're going to want to do to trigger those horde abilities is to use different factions that pair up exactly the way you need them to.
One of the other 2 key things within the game are the relics. The relics are cards that you'll be able to place in front of you that will stay in front of you and have ongoing effects. You're allowed to have 3 of these through the course of the game. And there's also some creatures with a haunt ability that are going to be able to stay out from round to round and eventually will get dismissed, but they allow you ways to be able to use those cards from one round to the next. So once again, each player is going to start with 10 cards. 2 of them are going to be faction-based according to the player. The game is very simple. On your turn, you're just going to play cards out in front of your player board and do a variety of different things.
Yeah, you draw up to 5 cards at the beginning of each round, and you're going to play those cards. Now, unlike a lot of deck builders where oftentimes people just splay their cards out, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful with this because of that horde ability. But once you play your cards out, you can do all sorts of different things. You can do them as many times as you want or is allowed on the cards and in any order you want. One of those things, and oftentimes the first thing people do, is going to take all of the money that's on their cards, or the coin in this case, and purchase one of the cards from the display row. You can purchase any of these cards that are on display, and also there is a small stack of what they call acolytes here. The acolyte is yet another card. This is sort of the slightly juicier version of some of the base cards in the game, but you never know what you're going to get in terms of what faction it's associated with and what the horde ability faction triggers are at the bottom of the card.
Yeah, so anytime you purchase anything from the row, it's going to be replaced with a new card. You can purchase as many cards as you so wish as long as you have the coin in order to purchase them. One of the other things you can do on your turn is to attack a player. You're going to use the power on the cards themselves. The Fanatic's going to have a baseline power, and you're simply going to show all the power that you have in front of you with any horde abilities that you have and attack that player. Now, they do have the capability of using armor from some of the cards that they're going to be able to collect through the course of the game as well. Those are typically on the relic cards that they'll have in front of them.
Exactly, and there's a couple other things before we get to the horde ability that you can also do on your turn, and one of which is your overlord ability. The Overlord cards that you have in front of you, which also have your hit points, are going to have a very unique and specific ability, usually tying into their faction and a lot of what their faction cards will do. So that is one reason you might want to load up on Spirits in my case, because you might be able to take advantage, a little bit more advantage of the Overlord power.
And a lot of those faction abilities or Overlord abilities are once per turn, since they're fairly powerful for most players.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do is use your relic abilities. Like Jeremy said, these relics, once you play them, they're going to come right out into play, and from that point forward, they will always be in play, and you can use those abilities whenever you want. Again, limited to the number of times you're allowed to based on the text on the card.
That's right. There's a variety of different keywords before we get into the horde ability themselves that you also need to be aware of in this game. We'll cover a couple of them. One of them is to simply claim cards. There's abilities through the course of the game that are on the cards that allow you to claim cards and put them directly on top of your draw deck, meaning that you're going to have those available in the next round. Typically, the cards that you buy are going to go to your discard pile.
Right. Another keyword is haunt. Jeremy mentioned this earlier. There's also these tokens here out on the table. When you haunt or use the haunt ability, you're simply going to place one of these tokens haunt side up on one of the characters that you're allowed to on your table. That card is going to be in play that round and linger to the next round as well. At the beginning of the next round or at the end of that round, you're going to flip this over and dismiss it to remind you that you need to get rid of that card.
And that haunt token can go away prematurely if it is part of a horde. That's one of the things. If you bring it to the forefront and use it to do an ability from it, it's going to be dismissed right away. One of the other abilities is to muster. Muster is a token that's going to be placed on top of your draw deck, and it means simply that on the next round you're going to be able to draw one extra card.
Yeah, and there are some factions that muster comes into play a little bit more often, so it's just one of those types of things that allows you to cycle through your deck a little bit faster.
Let's talk about actually horde, because we've been kind of glossing over it. This is one of the hooks within the game. On the bottom of all the faction cards, you're going to see some text line with two different types of factions on the left and the right. When you play these cards, you're always going to have the ability of using what's ever in the main text box of the card. These things are things like power, or be able to have coin to be able to purchase cards. However, when you place them in front of you, they're going to stay there until the end of the round. And the idea is you want to place other factions to the left and right of it, depending upon the icons that are shown. So in this case, this is a human faction, but it's showing that it wants to have a spirit faction to the left of it.
Right.
Once these connect, one of those two muster abilities is going to also be able to key in, and that's from the text across the bottom of the card. So again, you can start keying off not only the main actions of the cards, but numerous cards as you combo those together.
Exactly. It's really cool because once you do the first two, you choose one. If you add to that horde, you do another one, but you can't do the same one that you've already done. So if you can string together a lot of cards, you can get a massive combo off, which is sort of the beauty of any good deck builder.
And each player is going to basically take their turn drawing back up to 5 cards until one of the players has reduced the other player's health down to 0. And as we said at the very beginning, we really think that the horde ability is the huge draw here. Being able to key off those different cards is very unique to this style of game. A lot of cards will key, but they don't have the required factions. Like, you have to have very specific factions to be able to do very specific things, and all these factions have different types of abilities. So if you go heavy in coin, you may be going less in being able to sacrifice cards to be able to go or churn through your deck faster.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting distinction between a lot of deck builders. I play a lot of deck builders over the years, and most of them, like I said, boil down to like, okay,
here's my cards.
Here's my cards, and then sorting it all out. I think it's a little bit more interesting that you may want to think about the timing with which, and not even the timing, but the organization of how you play your cards out. It's just a little bit more thinking to do, for sure, for a deck builder.
And yeah, the art in this game is absolutely fantastic as well.
Yeah, it's got a really cool comic book feel. It's definitely really well done.
So that is Tears of London. It is on Kickstarter right now from Kolossal Games. If you have any questions, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.